It was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. Evelyn Parker had dreamed of this moment since she was a little girl. At 42, she had waited longer than most women she knew. The floral arrangements in ivory and blush pink lined the church aisle. A string quartet played softly near the altar, their bows gliding across violins that echoed pure romance. Guests whispered, phones discreetly snapping photos, capturing the air of sophistication that floated like perfume. She looked radiant. Her gown, custom-made with intricate lace, hugged her curves unapologetically, celebrating her full figure instead of hiding it. Evelyn wasn't a size 4 bride, but she never cared. She was proud of who she was, a black woman with honey-brown skin, soft curls pinned elegantly beneath a diamond-encrusted tiara. The satin train trailed behind her like a stream of light. And then there was him, Marcus. At 45, he was tall, charismatic, the kind of man who could command a room without saying a word. He had built a career as an attorney, wore his reputation like armor, and everyone agreed he was a catch. Evelyn had believed it too. Their whirlwind romance had felt like destiny. He made her laugh, whispered promises of forever, and told her she was the one he had been waiting for. Now, standing at the altar, hand in hand, their vows only moments away, Evelyn felt her chest swell with gratitude. She thought, at last, this is my reward for waiting, for believing in love. But destiny had a cruel sense of timing. Just as the officiant began to speak, a sound cut through the chapel like a jagged blade. A sharp voice rang out from the back. "Don't do it, Evelyn. Don't marry him." The church gasped. Heads turned. A ripple of confusion spread among the guests. Evelyn's heart lurched, her hand tightening around Marcus's. She turned, and there standing at the entrance was a woman. She was young, no older than 24, with flawless skin, glossy hair that spilled over her shoulders, and trembling hands clutching a phone. Her eyes glistened with tears, her chest heaving like she had sprinted all the way here. And then, she shouted again, louder, clearer, every syllable slicing into Evelyn's soul. "Marcus has been cheating on you with me for 2 years." The room erupted. Shocked gasps, horrified whispers, phones raised higher now, recording the chaos that unfolded like some twisted reality show. Evelyn froze. Her ears rang. The words didn't feel real, but they echoed again and again. "Cheating, 2 years, with me." "No," Evelyn whispered, her lips trembling. "That can't be true." But the young woman was already walking down the aisle, ignoring the glares of furious guests, ignoring Marcus's panicked expression. She stopped midway, opened her phone, and held up the screen. Photos, messages, videos. Proof. The evidence flashed like gunshots. Intimate selfies of Marcus in hotel rooms, text messages dripping with promises, even a video clip of them together, unmistakably damning. Evelyn's stomach twisted violently, her vision blurred. She staggered a step backward, her bouquet slipping from her fingers. Marcus tried to speak, his voice desperate, cracking under the weight of exposure. "Evelyn, baby, please, this isn't what it looks like. Not what it looks like." Evelyn's voice boomed, raw and shaking, louder than she thought possible. "You lied to me. You dragged me into this farce of a wedding knowing damn well you were already betraying me." Guests gasped again. Some stood, some muttered, and others, wide-eyed, continued filming. Evelyn's chest heaved as fury ignited where heartbreak had landed. Her trembling hands clenched into fists. For years, she had believed she was finally getting the happy ending she deserved. And yet, here she was, publicly humiliated. Her trust shattered into fragments before the people she loved most. She turned back to the young woman, whose tears now streamed freely. "Why now?" Evelyn demanded. "Why ruin this moment?" The woman's voice cracked as she answered, "Because he told me he was leaving you for me. He promised me everything. And when I saw this wedding on social media, I couldn't let you live this lie. Not anymore." Every word was a dagger. Evelyn felt the room spinning, her mother's horrified face in the second row, her bridesmaids whispering frantically, the officiant awkwardly clutching his Bible, frozen in disbelief. And Marcus, who had sworn forever, now exposed as a fraud, his face twisted in desperation, sweat glistening under the church lights. "Evelyn, please, don't listen to her." But Evelyn's scream cut him off. "Shut up." The sound reverberated off the walls, commanding silence. Evelyn's tears streamed now, not delicate but fierce, raw, unstoppable. She ripped the diamond ring from her finger, the ring she once thought symbolized eternity, and hurled it at him. It clinked against his chest and fell to the floor with a hollow sound. Then, with shaking hands, Evelyn gathered the front of her gown and turned. She wasn't going to stand here. humiliated. Another second. Gasps followed her as she stormed down the aisle, brushing past the young mistress who stepped aside, wide-eyed and guilt-ridden. The cameras of guests followed her exit, flashes of pity, judgment, and shock, recording her heartbreak for the world to see. Outside, the crisp autumn air hit Evelyn like a slap. Her chest rose and fell, her breaths sharp and uneven, her tiara tilted, her mascara streaking down her face, but she didn't care. She yanked off her veil, tossed it onto the pavement, and let out a scream so guttural it startled a flock of birds from the churchyard trees. In that moment, Evelyn Parker's life as she knew it ended. The wedding was over, the fairy tale was dead, and deep in her shattered heart, she swore, this betrayal would not break her. She would rise from these ashes, even if it killed her. The limousine that had been hired to whisk the newlyweds away sat idling outside the church, its glossy black paint gleaming under the autumn sun. It was meant to be the carriage to a fairy tale beginning. Instead, Evelyn shoved the door open, dragging the heavy folds of her gown inside with trembling hands. The driver turned, startled, confusion etched across his face. "Ma'am, where's drive?" Evelyn snapped, her voice raw, jagged, her eyes burned, her makeup ruined, but her tone carried an authority that silenced any question. The door slammed, the engine roared, and as the limousine pulled away from the church, Evelyn collapsed against the leather seat, her chest heaving with sobs that tore through her like knives. Her phone buzzed relentlessly in her clutch. She knew without looking. Texts, missed calls, her bridesmaids, her mother, even Marcus. The betrayal still echoed, replaying in her head like a cruel film she couldn't stop watching. 2 years, 2 damn years. She gripped the edge of her gown, her knuckles white. Marcus had been living a double life for longer than their entire engagement. Every romantic dinner, every whispered "I love you," every promise, it was all a lie. The limousine cut through the city streets, but Evelyn barely saw them. Her vision blurred with tears, her mind spinning with questions that had no answers. Why hadn't she seen it? Why hadn't she noticed the late nights, the unexplained absences, the subtle shifts in his tone when his phone buzzed? Because you wanted to believe, a bitter voice inside her whispered. Because you thought you finally found happiness, and you ignored the cracks. Her sobs quieted, replaced by a heavy silence. She pressed her palms against her eyes, willing herself not to drown in humiliation. This wasn't just betrayal, it was spectacle. The world had witnessed her downfall, live, in real time, through dozens of phones raised at that church. By tonight, videos of her ruined wedding would be online, strangers dissecting her pain like it was entertainment. The limousine stopped. The driver cleared his throat softly. "Ma'am, we've arrived." Evelyn blinked, disoriented. She had told him nothing, given no destination. Yet here they were, in front of her mother's townhouse, modest brick building with ivy crawling along the walls, a safe place, the only place she could imagine retreating to. She climbed out, her gown snagging against the car door, and staggered toward the steps. The door flew open before she could knock. Evelyn, her mother, Loretta Parker, was small but formidable. Her 64 years etched in lines of resilience across her dark skin. She wore a simple house dress, her silver-streaked hair pulled back, but her eyes radiated the fire of a woman who had weathered storms, and now they were wide with both fury and concern. "My baby," Loretta pulled her into a crushing embrace, ignoring the lace and satin, ignoring the mess of mascara and sweat. Evelyn collapsed into her arms, her sobs muffled against her mother's shoulder. He lied, Mama," Evelyn choked. "All this time, he had someone else." Loretta's jaw tightened. "I know, sweetheart, I know. We all heard it." Evelyn pulled back, her eyes searching her mother's face. You believe her. That girl. "I believe you deserve better," Loretta said firmly. "And any man who lets another woman crash his wedding with proof, well, that's all the answer we need, isn't it?" The words sank deep, offering no comfort but solid ground to stand on. Evelyn nodded weakly, stepping inside, the scent of cornbread and lavender filling her senses, her childhood home wrapped around her like a blanket, yet the ache in her chest refused to ease. Hours blurred into each other. Evelyn sat at the kitchen table, still in her ruined gown, veil abandoned somewhere, tiara tilted awkwardly. Her bridesmaids came, tried to console her. Her cousin removed the pins from her curls. Her mother brewed tea, but Evelyn barely moved, her mind caught in a loop of disbelief. Marcus called 17 times, texted 33, each message more desperate than the last. "I can explain. It's not what you think. Please, let's talk." Evelyn, I love you. She didn't answer. Instead, at midnight, she finally peeled herself out of the gown, the satin crumpling to the floor like the corpse of a dream. Standing in her slip, staring at herself in the mirror, Evelyn hardly recognized the woman looking back. Puffy eyes, streaked cheeks, lips trembling. "This isn't me," she whispered. "I won't let this be me." Her chest tightened with grief, but beneath it burned something else. Anger. She had given Marcus everything. Her trust, her loyalty, her heart, and he had spat on it, humiliated her, stolen her joy. But Evelyn Parker was not a woman who stayed broken. She stood taller, her reflection straightening with her. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory. "I believe you deserve better." Yes, she did. Evelyn didn't know what her next step would be: divorce papers, therapy, retreating into solitude, but she knew one thing with unshakable clarity. Marcus would not define her story. Her life was not over. It was only being rewritten. And when she returned, she would not return as the woman sobbing in a ruined gown. She would return as someone stronger, someone unbreakable. For the first time that day, Evelyn smiled faintly through her swollen lips. Marcus had tried to bury her beneath lies, but Evelyn Parker was going to rise higher than he ever imagined. The next morning, Evelyn awoke in her childhood bedroom. The floral curtains filtered the pale light of dawn, casting soft stripes across the quilt her mother had sewn decades ago. She blinked, her head heavy, her throat raw. For a moment, she almost believed yesterday had been a nightmare. Then her phone buzzed. She reached for it, dread curling in her stomach. Dozens of missed calls, unread messages, and notifications exploded across the screen. Headlines from gossip blogs, snippets of video already circulating online. Bride left at the altar after cheating scandal erupts. A million strangers dissecting her private heartbreak, as if it were tabloid entertainment. Her blood ran cold. She locked the phone, dropping it onto the nightstand as if it burned her hand. "Baby," Loretta's voice called softly from the hallway. "You awake?" "Yes, Mama." Evelyn sat up, smoothing her hair instinctively. Loretta stepped in carrying a tray of breakfast: scrambled eggs, toast, and coffee. She set it down gently. "Eat something, you'll need your strength." Evelyn shook her head. "I don't think I can stomach anything." "You have to try," Loretta urged. "Because I know him. He's coming." As if on cue, the doorbell rang. Loud, insistent. Evelyn froze, her heart lurching. She didn't need to look. She knew it was Marcus. Loretta sighed, her face tightening with disdain. "You want me to send him away?" "No." Evelyn's voice surprised even herself. It was steady, controlled. "I'll face him." She rose, still in her nightdress, and walked barefoot through the hall. Each step felt like marching toward a battlefield. When she opened the front door, Marcus stood there disheveled, eyes bloodshot, tie loose around his neck like he hadn't slept. "Evelyn," he breathed, reaching toward her. She stepped back before his fingers could graze her skin. "Don't." His arm dropped. "Please, baby, let me explain." "Explain." Evelyn's voice cracked like a whip. "Explain how you strung me along for 2 years while sharing a bed with another woman. How you stood at that altar yesterday looking me in the eye and promising forever while you were living a lie." Marcus flinched, shame flickering across his face. "I made mistakes. I didn't know how to end it with her." She kept threatening. "Stop." Evelyn cut him off, her tone sharp as glass. "You don't get to spin this. You don't get to make her the problem. You chose this. You lied to me, to my family, to everyone sitting in that church." His jaw tightened. "I love you, Evelyn. You're the one I want. That girl, she was a mistake. You're my future." Her laugh burst out, hollow and bitter. "Your future? You torched our future when you betrayed me. You didn't just cheat too, humiliated me in front of the world. Do you understand what you took from me?" Marcus reached again, desperation dripping from his voice. "We can fix this. We can get through this. Please don't throw us away." Evelyn's eyes blazed. "Throw us away? You already did. You threw away every ounce of trust I gave you. You don't get to beg for forgiveness because you're scared of losing me now." He faltered, his confident attorney's posture collapsing into a man undone. "I need you, Evelyn. I can't lose you." She inhaled sharply, her chest aching. For a flicker of a moment, the part of her that had once loved him, believed in him, wanted to crumble. But then, images of that young woman holding up proof in front of hundreds of witnesses surged back. The humiliation, the betrayal, the cruelty. Evelyn straightened her shoulders. "You already lost me." Silence fell heavy between them. Marcus's lips parted, but no words came. His eyes glistened. his face etched with the realization that his grip on her life had slipped for good. Loretta's voice rang from behind. "You heard her. Now leave before I call the police." Marcus swallowed hard, his gaze darting between Evelyn and her mother. For a moment, he looked like he might fight, argue, plead further, but then he nodded slowly, his expression breaking. "Fine," he whispered, "but this isn't over." "Yes, it is," Evelyn said firmly, closing the door with finality. She leaned against the wood, her breath shaking. The echo of his presence lingered, the smell of his cologne still faint in the air, but he was gone. And for the first time since yesterday, Evelyn felt something that almost resembled relief. She turned to her mother, who watched silently, pride in her eyes. "You did good, baby," Loretta said softly. Evelyn nodded, tears welling again. "Then why does it hurt so much?" "Because you loved him, and because he didn't deserve you." Those words wrapped around Evelyn like a bomb. She finally allowed herself to sink into her mother's embrace, her sobs breaking free once more. But beneath the grief, beneath the humiliation, something powerful stirred. Strength. The war wasn't over. The healing hadn't even begun. But Evelyn knew this. She would not be defined by Marcus's betrayal. She would carve out a new life brick by brick, choice by choice, until her name meant resilience, not scandal. And Marcus, he would become nothing more than a cautionary tale. The days after the wedding felt like walking through a storm of broken glass. Everywhere Evelyn turned, reminders of Marcus Lingard. His suit still hung in her closet. His cologne clung to the bathroom towels. Wedding gifts sat unopened in the living room like silent accusations. And her phone buzzed endlessly with messages she couldn't bear to read. The world knew. That was the worst part. The humiliation hadn't stayed contained within the four walls of the church. Clips from the wedding had gone viral. Strangers laughed, debated, speculated. Headlines screamed. Bride humiliated at the altar after mistress crashes ceremony. Evelyn Parker had become a spectacle. Her heartbreak reduced to clickbait. She deleted her social media. She stopped answering calls. She couldn't stomach the pitying eyes of her coworkers at the gallery where she worked as a curator. Every invitation to come talk felt like salt rubbed into a wound. She wasn't ready to expose, so she retreated. Her mother's townhouse became a sanctuary. Evelyn spent days curled under quilts, alternating between crying until she was hollow and staring blankly at the ceiling. Food lost its taste. Sleep came in restless fragments. The humiliation wrapped around her like chains, dragging her deeper into shame. One night, unable to bear the weight of silence, Evelyn stood before her bathroom mirror. She hardly recognized the woman staring back. Swollen eyes, sallow skin, hair matted from neglect. For a moment, she thought of Marcus, of the way he used to call her beautiful, even when she doubted herself. And then she thought of that girl in the church, young and radiant, holding evidence of betrayal. Her chest tightened with rage. "No more," Evelyn whispered to the reflection. Her voice trembled, but her eyes burned with something fierce. "You don't get to stay broken. Not for him." The next morning, she began small. She showered, she combed her hair, she pulled on jeans and a sweater, instead of the oversized robe she'd worn for days. Loretta noticed immediately, her face softening with pride. "That's my girl," her mother said, setting down a plate of eggs. "Step by step, that's how we heal." Evelyn nodded, chewing slowly even though her appetite hadn't fully returned. It wasn't about hunger. It was about reclaiming pieces of herself Marcus had stolen. Days turned into weeks. Evelyn began walking every morning, her sneakers pounding against the pavement of her childhood neighborhood. At first, she barely lasted 10 minutes before exhaustion forced her back, but she kept going. Each lap around the block felt like proving to herself she could move forward. One afternoon, while passing a park, Evelyn spotted children playing. Their laughter rang out like bells, and for the first time in weeks, a smile tugged at her lips. She remembered joy. She remembered that life wasn't only betrayal and pain, but healing wasn't linear. There were nights she woke sobbing, Marcus's face haunting her dreams, times when her phone buzzed with his name flashing across the screen, and her resolve wavered. Once, she almost answered. Almost. But then she remembered his voice at the altar, his hand gripping hers while lies dripped from his mouth, and she pressed block. Therapy came next. Loretta insisted, sliding a card across the kitchen table one morning. "Her name's Dr. Hayes. She's good. She's like us. She'll understand." Evelyn resisted at first. She didn't want to sit in a chair and pour out her humiliation to a stranger. But eventually, curiosity or maybe desperation -1. Dr. Naomi Hayes was a black woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a presence that felt both firm and safe. Their first session began with silence, Evelyn staring at her hands while words clawed inside her chest. When she finally spoke, it came out raw. "He ruined me." Dr. Hayes didn't flinch. "He betrayed you." That's not the same thing. The distinction cracked something open in Evelyn. Week by week, she unspooled the pain, the shame, the fury. Dr. Hayes guided her to see that Marcus's choices weren't reflections of her worth, that she wasn't broken, she was wounded. And wounds could heal. Slowly, Evelyn began to believe it. By the third month, she returned to work at the gallery. Her colleagues greeted her with hesitant smiles, unsure how to act. Evelyn squared her shoulders, determined to prove she wasn't a ghost of herself. She threw herself into curating the upcoming exhibition, long nights spent arranging canvases and sculpting displays. It wasn't about distraction, it was about creation, building something new. One evening, after locking up the gallery, Evelyn stood in the empty hall. The lights glowed softly against polished floors, and for the first time in months, pride swelled in her chest. She had survived. The world had laughed, judged, pitied. Marcus had betrayed, humiliated, discarded, but Evelyn Parker was still here, still standing. And as she gazed at the art around her, colors and shapes alive with passion, she whispered a vow to herself: "This isn't the end, this is the beginning." 3 months after the wedding disaster, Evelyn had grown used to the rhythm of survival: work, therapy, long walks, occasional dinners with her mother. The gaping wound Marcus left had begun to scar over, though the ache remained. But what surprised her most was the small flicker of curiosity. She began to feel toward the world again. It started with laughter. During one of her morning walks, Evelyn passed by a cafe she hadn't noticed before, a little place tucked between a bookstore and a florist. The smell of roasted beans spilled into the street, drawing her in. On impulse, she stepped inside. The cafe buzzed with warmth, chatter, clinking cups. Evelyn ordered a cappuccino and found a corner seat, tucking her hands around the mug as though it could shield her from the world. That's when she noticed her. Across the room, at a table near the window, sat a woman with chestnut brown skin and a cascade of tight curls that framed her face like a halo. She wore oversized glasses, hoop earrings, and a denim jacket covered in enamel pins. She was laughing at something on her phone. The sound so bright it cut through Evelyn's gloom like sunlight through storm clouds. Their eyes met for a heartbeat. Evelyn almost looked away, but the woman smiled, warm, unguarded, like she'd been expecting Evelyn all along. Against her better judgment, Evelyn smiled back. The moment passed quickly, but it stayed with her. The next week, Evelyn returned to the cafe. She told herself it was because the coffee was good, because she needed somewhere to read outside her apartment. But when she walked in and spotted the woman at the same table, she felt her pulse quicken. This time, the woman waved. Evelyn hesitated, then walked over. "Hi," the woman said, her voice husky yet soft. "You always sit alone. Want some company?" Evelyn blinked. Strangers didn't usually approach her, but something about this woman's energy felt disarming. "Sure," Evelyn said, sliding into the seat opposite. "I'm Zoe," she said, extending a hand. Her nails were painted electric blue. "Evelyn," she replied, shaking it. They talked, at first about simple things, the weather, the cafe, Zoe's obsession with crime podcasts, but conversation flowed easily, laughter bubbling between them like it had been waiting for years. Evelyn found herself telling Zoe about her job at the gallery, about the upcoming exhibit she was curating. "I love art," Zoe said, eyes lighting up, "but don't quiz me. I'm more of a feelings person than a facts person. That's the best way to experience it." Evelyn replied, "Facts fade, feelings stay." Zoe grinned, her dimples deepening. "I like you already." Evelyn flushed. She wasn't used to such open warmth. Not anymore. Over the next few weeks, their paths kept crossing, sometimes by accident, sometimes not. Zoe seemed to have a way of brightening whatever space she occupied. She teased baristas, complimented strangers on their outfits, told stories with animated hand gestures that made people stop and listen. For Evelyn, whose life had been weighed down by grief and shame, Zoe was a breath of oxygen. One evening, they lingered at the cafe until closing. As they walked out, Zoe asked, "Want to grab dinner? There's a taco truck around the corner that's basically heaven on wheels." Evelyn hesitated. A part of her still carried the fear of betrayal, the voice whispering she couldn't trust anyone again. But another part, the part that had been waking up since therapy, urged her to say yes. She did. Dinner stretched into hours. They sat on a curb eating tacos, salsa dripping down their fingers, laughing until Evelyn's cheeks ached. Zoe shared stories about her childhood in Atlanta, about moving to the city to start her photography business. Evelyn confessed her love for classic jazz records and her dream of one day curating her own solo exhibition. "You should do it," Zoe said, her tone earnest. "The world needs people who create beauty after surviving ugliness." The words hit Evelyn harder than she expected. No one had ever framed her pain as fuel for art before. When Zoe looked at her, it wasn't with pity, it was with possibility. Still, fear lurked in the shadows. That night, lying in bed, Evelyn scolded herself for feeling drawn to Zoe. She barely knew this woman, and hadn't she learned what happened when you trusted too quickly? But even as she lectured herself, her phone buzzed with a message. "Zoe, tonight was fun. You laugh like music. Let's do it again sometime." Evelyn stared at the screen, her heart thudding. Slowly, she typed back, "Evelyn, I'd like that days turned into weeks." Their friendship deepened at least. That's what Evelyn told herself it was. They went to art shows, food festivals, late-night movies. Zoe introduced Evelyn to new music, new restaurants, new ways of seeing the city she thought she already knew. One Saturday afternoon, Zoe brought her along to a rooftop where she was shooting portraits. Evelyn watched Zoe work, mesmerized. She moved with confidence, coaxing laughter and vulnerability from her subjects with ease. Behind the lens, Zoe glowered. "Want to turn?" Zoe asked, lowering her camera. "Oh, I don't," Evelyn began. But Zoe was already adjusting the strap around her neck. "Just one shot, for me," Evelyn relented, standing awkwardly against the skyline. She felt self-conscious, aware of every curve, every flaw. But Zoe's gaze softened. "Breathe," Zoe said gently. "Don't pose, just be." The shutter clicked. Later, when Evelyn saw the photo, her breath caught. She didn't look broken. She didn't look humiliated or weak. She looked alive. Zoe had captured something Evelyn thought she'd lost forever. The realization terrified her. She wasn't supposed to feel this way. Not yet. Not so soon after Marcus. But the truth settled into her bones. Zoe made her feel seen, wanted, beautiful. Not despite her scars, but because of them. And Evelyn wasn't sure what scared her more, losing that feeling, or surrendering to it. One evening, after another long walk together, Zoe stopped in front of Evelyn's building. "Can I ask you something?" Zoe said, her voice unusually cautious. "Of course. Are we just friends?" The question hung in the air, electric. Evelyn's pulse raced. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. I don't know," she admitted. "I'm still healing from things." Zoe nodded, her expression gentle. "I get it. I don't want to rush you, but I also don't want to pretend I don't feel something when I look at you." Evelyn swallowed hard. The world tilted beneath her feet. For the first time in months, she didn't feel like she was falling. She felt like she was being caught. The night Zoe asked if they were just friends, Evelyn hardly slept. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation over and over. Zoe's eyes, steady, patient, vulnerable, haunted her. She had wanted to answer differently. She had wanted to lean across the space between them and say, "No, we're not just friends. I want this. I want you." But fear had choked her. Every time she closed her eyes, Marcus's face appeared. His smile, his promises, the way he had looked at her on their wedding day right before his betrayal detonated her life. What if Zoe turned out the same? What if Evelyn risked her heart again only to be humiliated, discarded, destroyed? The fear was suffocating. At therapy that week, Dr. Hayes noticed immediately. "You're restless," she said, leaning back in her chair. "What's stirring inside you?" Evelyn hesitated, then confessed. "There's someone who makes me feel alive again, but I'm terrified of it." Dr. Hayes's lips curved into a small, knowing smile. "Terrified of joy. That's common after betrayal. But let me ask you something, Evelyn. Do you want to live protecting yourself from pain, or do you want to live experiencing love?" The question lodged itself deep in her chest. Zoe didn't push after that night. She showed up the same as always, bright, funny, irreverent. They still went for tacos, still wandered art exhibits, still talked late into the evening. But Evelyn sensed the shift. The air between them carried a new electricity, a hum of possibility waiting for her to reach out and claim it. She both longed for and dreaded it. One Saturday, Zoe invited Evelyn to a small gathering on her rooftop, just a few friends, wine, music under string lights. Evelyn almost said no. Crowds made her anxious. Now she feared whispers, judgment, recognition from those who had seen the viral videos. But Zoe's eyes shone with hope when she asked, and Evelyn couldn't bring herself to refuse. The rooftop pulsed with laughter when Evelyn arrived. People hugged Zoe, clapped her on the back, teased her about the playlists she made for every occasion. Evelyn hovered at the edge, clutching a glass of rose like a shield. Zoe noticed. She always did. Sliding beside her, Zoe whispered, "You don't have to be anyone but yourself here. They're my people. They'll love you." Evelyn's throat tightened. She hadn't felt welcome anywhere in months. Yet here, under the soft glow of string lights, with Zoe's shoulder brushing hers, she felt almost safe. As the evening stretched on, Evelyn loosened. She laughed at stories, swayed to the music, even shared a bit about her work. Zoe watched her with quiet pride, as though cheering each small victory. Later, when most guests had left, Zoe and Evelyn remained on the rooftop. The city skyline shimmered around them, a sea of lights against the dark. "You were amazing tonight," Zoe said softly. "I know it wasn't easy." Evelyn's chest swelled with warmth and dread. The way Zoe looked at her, like she was more than the sum of her scars, made Evelyn want to collapse into her arms. But the memory of Marcus loomed, sharp and suffocating. "Why do you even care?" Evelyn blurted, her voice harsher than intended. "I'm a mess. You don't need to fix me." Zoe blinked, hurt flickering across her face. "I'm not trying to fix you, Evelyn. I just like you, as you are, mess and all." The sincerity in her tone cracked Evelyn open. Tears burned her eyes before she could stop them. Zoe reached out, hesitated, then gently touched her hand. "You don't have to be afraid with me." Evelyn wanted to believe it, desperately, but the voice in her head screamed, "What if you're wrong? What if it's another trap?" She pulled back, whispering, "I can't, not yet." Zoe nodded slowly, her expression unreadable. "Okay, I'll wait. But I won't wait forever." The words sliced through Evelyn like glass. In the days that followed, Evelyn spiraled. She buried herself in work, staying late at the gallery, convincing herself it was easier to drown in tasks than to face her heart. She avoided Zoe's calls, responded to texts with short replies. Each time she hit send, guilt gnawed at her. One night, Loretta found her sitting in the kitchen long after midnight, staring into a cold cup of tea. "What's wrong, baby?" her mother asked gently. Evelyn broke. Tears spilled as she confessed everything's Ozzy's kindness, her fear of trusting again, the weight of Marcus's ghost pressing down on her. Loretta listened, nodding, then took Evelyn's hands. "You can't let that man steal your future the way he stole your past. If you keep shutting love out, he wins twice." Evelyn stared at her mother, the truth sinking in. Marcus had already taken so much. Was she really going to let him dictate the rest of her life? The turning point came a week later. Evelyn was walking home when she passed a busker singing on the corner, his voice cracked with emotion, the lyrics raw with longing and hope. A small crowd gathered, swaying, some crying, some smiling. Evelyn froze, her heart pounding. Music had always moved her, but this pierced straight through her fear. She realized she didn't want to live hiding from pain. She wanted to feel, even if it meant risking heartbreak again. That night, Evelyn called Zoe. "Can we meet?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Of course," Zoe said immediately. They met at the cafe where it all began. The smell of coffee wrapped around them, familiar and grounding. Zoe looked wary, like she was bracing for goodbye. Evelyn's hands shook as she spoke. "I'm scared, terrified, actually, but I can't stop thinking about you, and I don't want to keep running from it." Zoe's eyes widened, hope sparking. "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying," Evelyn swallowed hard, tears gathering, "I want to try with you, if you'll still have me." For a moment, silence stretched. Then Zoe's smile broke like dawn. "Evelyn Parker," she said, reaching across the table to clasp her hand. "I've been waiting for you to say that." Relief and terror surged together, but beneath them both was something stronger, something Evelyn hadn't felt in months. Possibility. Falling in love again was like learning to breathe underwater, terrifying at first, then strangely natural once Evelyn stopped fighting it. With Zoe, every moment felt sharper, brighter. Coffee dates turned into lazy afternoons sprawled across Zoe's couch, music humming softly in the background. Quick hugs stretched into lingering touches. And one night, after weeks of tension building, they finally kissed. It was gentle at first, tentative, Evelyn trembling as if the world might shatter again. But Zoe's hands framed her face with patience, her lips steady and sure. The kiss deepened, slow and reverent. until Evelyn pulled back with tears streaming down her cheeks. "I'm sorry," she whispered, embarrassed. Zoe only smiled, brushing the tears away. "Don't apologize for feeling, it just means it matters." And it did. For the first time in months, Evelyn felt joy that wasn't tinged with shame. She and Zoe explored the city together like teenagers, midnight walks, rooftop picnics, even dancing in their socks across Zoe's apartment floor. Evelyn laughed more than she had since childhood. But love, she learned, didn't erase fear. It coexisted with it. The first crack appeared at the gallery. Evelyn was preparing for the exhibit when a colleague approached her with that familiar, pitying look. "I saw you out the other night," the woman said, "with that photographer, Zoe. I'm glad you're moving on." The pause in her voice carried judgment. Evelyn couldn't ignore. Moving on too soon. Moving on in the wrong way. Moving on with the wrong person. Whispers had followed her since the wedding debacle, but this felt sharper, more personal. Evelyn wanted to snap that her love life was no one's business, but instead she smiled tightly and excused herself. That night, she couldn't sleep. The old shame crept back in. What would people think? Was she reckless for opening her heart again, especially to a woman? Would the world see her as foolish twice over? Zoe noticed Evelyn's distance the next day. "Talk to me," she urged, tilting her head with concern. "It's nothing." Evelyn lied. "Evelyn?" Zoe's voice was firm but gentle. "Don't hide from me." "Not you." The words unlocked the dam. Evelyn confessed everything: the whispers, the judgment, the fear of becoming a spectacle again. Zoe listened quietly, then said, "People will always talk. They talked when you fell. They'll talk now that you're rising. But which story do you want them to tell? One where you stayed broken, or one where you chose love anyway?" The question lingered in Evelyn's mind like a mantra, yet the past refused to stay buried. One evening, as Evelyn left the gallery, she froze at the sight of Marcus waiting outside. He looked thinner, tired, his suit rumpled. "Evelyn," he began, stepping forward. "Please, just hear me out." Her stomach twisted. Part of her wanted to run, but another part, the old part, ached to understand why. "I don't owe you anything," she said, her voice trembling but steady. "I made a mistake," Marcus said quickly, "the biggest mistake of my life. I thought I wanted freedom, but I only want you. I've ended things with her. I want us back." Evelyn laughed bitterly. "You humiliated me in front of everyone I love. You shattered me, and now you think you can just walk back into my life." Marcus's eyes glistened. "Because I know you still love me." The arrogance of it stunned her. Once, she might have wavered, but now, with Zoe's laughter echoing in her memory, she saw Marcus clearly, a man who only wanted her when it suited him. "No," Evelyn said firmly, "what I feel for you now isn't love, it's pity." She turned and walked away, her heart pounding but lighter than it had been in years. When she told Zoe about the encounter, Zoe stiffened. "If he comes near you again, you tell me. I mean it." Evelyn smiled at Zoe's protectiveness, but also felt guilt nibbling at her. She hadn't told Zoe how much Marcus's reappearance had shaken her, because admitting that meant admitting she wasn't entirely free of her past, and that scared her almost as much as losing Zoe. The night of the exhibition arrived. The gallery sparkled with lights, guests milling among the art Evelyn had curated with painstaking care. Zoe stood proudly by her side, camera slung across her shoulder, snapping candid shots of the crowd. For a moment, Evelyn felt triumphant, like she had rebuilt herself, brick by brick, scar by scar. Then she heard it. A group of women whispering near the champagne table. "That's her, the bride who got left at the altar. And now, she's with that girl." Bold choice. Guess some people never learn. The words sliced through Evelyn's armor. Her chest tightened, breath shallow. Panic clawed at her throat. She wanted to run, to disappear, to curl back into the shell she had fought so hard to leave. Zoe appeared at her side instantly, sensing the shift. "What's wrong?" she whispered. Evelyn shook her head, tears threatening. "I can't, everyone's looking." Judging Zoe gently cupped her face, forcing Evelyn to meet her eyes. "Let them look, let them whisper. You know what I see." What? Evelyn choked. "A woman who was broken and chose to rise. A woman brave enough to love again. That's the only story that matters." The room blurred around them, but Zoe's gaze anchored Evelyn. Slowly, she inhaled, then exhaled, grounding herself for the rest of the night. She stayed close to Zoe, drawing strength from her presence. Later, alone in Zoe's apartment, Evelyn finally let the tears fall. "I don't know if I'm strong enough for this," she whispered. Zoe pulled her close, holding her tightly. Then let me be strong for both of us, until you are. The words cracked something inside Evelyn, not from pain, but from hope. Because for the first time, she began to believe that maybe love wasn't about never falling again. Maybe it was about finding someone who would hold you while you learned to stand. The morning after the exhibition, Evelyn woke with a strange calm. For months, she had lived with fear clinging to her like a second skin. But now, lying beside Zoe, her head resting on Zoe's chest as the steady rhythm of her heartbeat filled the silence, Evelyn felt something different. Strength. Not the loud, defiant kind, but the quiet strength that comes from surviving, from choosing again and again to stand up after being knocked down. But the world was not finished testing her. 2 weeks later, Marcus showed up again, this time at the gallery, while she was finalizing contracts for a traveling exhibit. He barged in with flowers, as though a bouquet could erase betrayal. "Evelyn," he pleaded, dropping to his knees, right in the center of the gallery floor. "Please, I can't live without you. Give me another chance." Visitors stopped, whispering, pulling out their phones. The scene was a nightmare. Déjà vu. Marcus performing. Evelyn trapped in his spotlight. Her hands trembled, but she steadied her voice. "Get up, Marcus. This isn't love. This is desperation." He looked stunned, as if the script had gone wrong. "But we were meant to be." "No," she cut him off. "We were meant to teach me what I will never accept again." Gasps rippled through the room. Evelyn's heart pounded, but she felt free. For the first time, she wasn't a victim of his choices. She was the author of her own ending. Security escorted Marcus out, leaving Evelyn shaking but unbroken. She caught her reflection in the glass doors of the gallery, shoulders squared, chin high. She wasn't the woman humiliated at the altar anymore. She was someone reborn. That night, Evelyn and Zoe sat on the rooftop, city lights stretching endlessly around them. Zoe reached for her hand, squeezing gently. "You were incredible today," Zoe said. "I was terrified," Evelyn admitted. "Being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing it anyway." Evelyn turned, studying Zoe's face, the warm brown of her skin, the softness in her eyes, the curve of her lips that always seemed ready to smile. She realized she hadn't just found love again. She'd found partnership, healing, and a mirror that reflected her true self back at her. "I need to tell you something," Evelyn whispered. Zoe arched a brow. "Should I be worried?" "No," Evelyn smiled faintly. "You've waited for me to catch up to my own heart, and now I finally have. Zoe, I love you." Zoe blinked, then grinned, wide and unrestrained. "Took you long enough." They laughed, and when they kissed, it wasn't tentative or fearful. It was certain. The months that followed weren't perfect. Nothing ever was. There were still whispers, still moments when Evelyn's scars ached. But instead of hiding, she faced them. She spoke openly in therapy, leaned on Zoe when the fear returned, and even began giving talks at local art events about resilience, about finding beauty after devastation. People didn't whisper about the bride who got left anymore. They whispered about the curator who rose. Evelyn had become more than her pain. One evening, during a late-night walk, Zoe pulled out her camera and snapped a candid photo of Evelyn laughing under a streetlight. "What was that for?" Evelyn teased. Zoe showed her the screen. The photo glowed with life, Evelyn's smile radiant, her eyes bright. "Because this," Zoe said softly, "is who you are, and I want you to remember it every time you doubt." Tears pricked Evelyn's eyes. "You've given me so much." Zoe shook her head. "You gave it to yourself. I just held the mirror." On the anniversary of the wedding that wasn't, Evelyn did something radical. Instead of hiding, she threw a party at the gallery, not to erase the past, but to reclaim it. Friends, colleagues, and family filled the space, celebrating not survival but transformation. At the center stood Evelyn, in a flowing emerald dress, her curls pinned high, her smile dazzling. She raised a glass. "To the worst day of my life," she said, laughter rippling through the crowd. "Because without it, I wouldn't be here tonight. I wouldn't have found my strength, and I wouldn't have found love." She turned to Zoe, who beamed back, and together they clinked glasses as the room erupted in applause. Evelyn's story was no longer one of betrayal. It was one of rebirth. Later, that night, after the last guest had gone, Evelyn and Zoe stood alone in the gallery. The lights cast their shadows long across the floor, intertwining. "You did it," Zoe murmured. "You rewrote the ending." Evelyn smiled, pressing a kiss to Zoe's temple. "No, this isn't the ending. It's just the beginning." And for the first time in a long time, Evelyn believed it with every piece of her heart.